and welcome to the first ever episode of Weekly Programming, where we bring you the most trusted news in Stores, Connecticut. My name is Tam Amani.
And I'm Joe Stickles. We would like to thank our sponsors, shown below. Today's show will feature
Chris Christie, the worst thing to happen to New Jersey since Hurricane Sandy.
UConn's closed-door policy.
And how our 26 good ones are being used at the university. Now that we've got your attention, it's time to focus on a more tragic issue, Syria. There are so many problems going on in this country, not even Olivia Pope can fix them. After I give you a brief timeline of the events in Syria, you'll be left wondering, why are they fighting again? This conflict is more complicated than finding out if you're smarter than a fifth grader. So a brief outline of how this conflict all started. Hopefully, you'll be able to follow along. It all began with protests against the Syrian regime and its leader, President Bashar al-Assad, in 2011. Syria was one of 14 nations part of the Arab Spring that experienced rebellion from citizens demanding democracy and change. Tunisia was the only country successful in overthrowing their dictator, but also maintaining a democratic society. As you've seen in the news, that didn't work with Syria, and the situation turned violent when the military attacked its citizens, prompting rebel groups to form and fight back. By the way, shout out to Comparative Politics with Professor Singer. Finally, all the articles I had to read about civil wars and terrorism are actually useful. Since then, Syria continues to have an authoritarian regime led by Assad and the military. These are all the parties involved in their civil war. First, you have the National Coalition, which is the dominant rebel group supported by the U.S. Then you got al-Nusra, a Syrian branch of al-Qaeda fighters that's fighting the regime, and ISIL. And we all know ISIL, aka ISIS, the terrorist organization that's harming civilians and fighting the regime. Russia, Hezbollah, and Iran are all backing the Syrian government, while the U.S., Turkey, and Gulf states are backing the rebels. Oh, and it's not the Middle East if religion and politics aren't involved, because we have the Shiites, which is the name of the fighters who are Shia Muslims, the sect that is the majority ruling in Iran and Hezbollah, helping Syria's Islam sect, the Alawites. All of these people are fighting the Sunnis, who the Gulf states, rebels, and ISIS all follow. Now, is everyone following me so far? No? I lost you after I said civil war, right?
I got lost as soon as you said rebel.
This is only the prequel. The most recent news in Syria is that a ceasefire initiated on Saturday after approval from the United Nations in December 2015. But journalists, the UN Council, and scholars don't think that this ceasefire will be effective. Secretary John Kerry said, "What we have are words on paper. What we need to see in the next few days are actions on the ground." Lieutenant Colonel Ahmed Saoud, leader of the U.S.-supported Division 13 rebel group, said, "I hope it will succeed. I wish for anything to stop the bloodshed." Well, of course it won't be effective. With a civil war / Shakespearean tragedy, that's not really a clear winner, dominant force in this war. Everybody's just attacking everybody. The only people really screwed are just innocent civilians who probably wanted Assad out too, but did not want to join the rebel groups or become a terrorist organization. Now they have to flee the country because people are power hungry and cray. But you know, Joe, I have a question for Assad.
What's that?
Okay, maybe a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
First, is Assad currently living in his presidential estate in Syria now? Because he must be living in a part of Syria where he can't see how the rest of the country looks like. Have you seen Syria today? It's just filled with rubble and ruined buildings. Does Assad care what's happening to civilians in his country? Does he not hear the bombs and explosions and shootings that are happening and people getting killed? Does he look out in his window and say, "Oh, what a lovely day it is in my beautiful country. Look, there goes the rebels trying to attack my palace. Oh, the military shut them down. Ah, Russia bombing those pesky civilians and rebels and ISIL. I don't even know why ISIL is fighting. Who invited them to this party? Anywho, I'll go back to my palace and enjoy as my country is getting destroyed outside." And this, people, is when it really starts to get ugly. He better watch out.
The 2016 National Stand-Up Comedy Contest, also known as the presidential race, has had its ups and downs, but mostly downs for all of the candidates. So many outlandish ideas have been thrown around during the debates. Ted Cruz has been called a liar, Bernie Sanders a socialist, and Donald Trump has been called the leading Republican candidate. However, the one that won't seem to stop popping up in the news is Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Now, she has really tried to fight back, often laughing off accusations.
A few things. Do you have a skiff in your home?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and who else was at your home? Were you alone?
I was alone, yes.
The whole night?
Well, yes, the whole night.
Well, I don't know why that's funny. I mean, did you have any in-person briefings? I don't find it funny at all.
I'm sorry, a little note of levity at 7:15.
Well, I mean, the reason
noted
I say
for
it's
the
not
record.
funny is because it went well into the night when our folks on the ground were still in danger. So I don't think it's funny to ask you if you were alone the
Congresswoman-
whole night.
Wait. No, I still don't understand why it's funny. If that didn't make her look bad enough, Hillary won't be able to recover from what I'm about to reveal. I have the emails that everyone has been talking about in this massive scandal. It was actually quite easy getting these emails too. My friend decided to put me on all of the presidential candidates' email lists. So now I get 20 emails a day from Trump saying if I don't support him, I'll have to pay for the wall. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't get many from Ben Carson. Well, no matter, he gets his points across during the debates anyway. Well, the ones that he shows up for. All right, Tama, this is going to get a little emotional, so I'd grab a tissue box if I were you.
Well, this is all we have because, UConn's budget cuts. We can't get a real tissue box.
Okay, I guess we're going with napkins. That's okay.
No, not ready for this.
So it all started with a simple email from Hillary.
Okay.
Granted, I was a little thrown off that we were already on a first-name basis, but I just wrote it off. Then our conversation started getting a little more personal, and we started to get to know each other. I could tell that this friendship was becoming more and more special, but I was shocked when she tried to take it to the next level. I gave in. Me and her had so many things in common. In fact, no matter what I said, her opinion seemed to shift, as if she were trying to do anything to get my vote. Things were going fine, even though she started getting really needy. And then things escalated. Bill came into the picture. I didn't know what to do, so I ignored it. But he was persistent, sending me emails every day. I couldn't handle the situation, but Hillary stressed that we work through it. But in the end, Bill was just too intimidating for me, and I had to leave Hillary. She really hurt me, so I had to unsubscribe from her email list, knowing that she couldn't come back into my life. And thankfully, I haven't heard from her since.
Oh my gosh, Joe. I'm so sorry you guys had to break up. I can't believe she would do that to you.
That's her. She just emailed me back. Get out of my life, Hillary! I can't take this!
Calm down. Calm down.
She's always
Calm down.
emailing me all the time. She just
Oh my
won't
God.
get out.
You'll be okay. Calm down.
No. All right. Count to 10.
Okay.
This week, Super Tuesday took place, and no, the hype for the day wasn't the Mooyah for 2 year deal. The talk revolved around the two big winners of the caucuses, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It looks like after their victories that they will represent the Republican and Democratic nominations. However, this doesn't stop any of the other candidates from running as independents. As we all know, the last time an independent won the presidential election was... Just give me a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, Trump won multiple states despite the controversial interview he had with CNN.
Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. Nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacy. What you're talking about, you wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I'd have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them, and certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you
Ku
may
Klux
have groups
Klan?
in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay, I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but
I don't know any, honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
What is white supremacy? Are you kidding? If you, Mr. Trump, don't know what that is, then maybe you shouldn't be running for president of the United States. By not answering that question directly, he's basically supporting supremacists to continue to endorse him. I love the reaction of the interviewer, though. Let's take another look at that.
I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
You know, I'm just talking about the Ku Klux Klan here. Nope, no biggie. I thought you knew him, but, you know, whatever.
Gotta love Chris Jake Tapper.
Trump is honestly unbelievable, and it's really affecting his other candidates' campaigns. Just a few weeks ago, Jeb Bush was knocked out of the election after Trump basically embarrassed him to the point where he just had to call it quits. Imagine the disappointment for Jeb. Just think about the family dinners at the Bush house. Mrs. Bush is like, oh, look at my two little presidents all grown up, and Jeb, get your turtles off the table. Or when they go to get a family picture. All right, George, you get a little closer to the center, and other George, could you stand up a little taller? And Jeb, could you move a little to the left? Yes, that's right. Just keep going, a little more. Just no, you got to keep on moving. I can still see you. Nope, and perfect. Click. It's not only Jeb Bush that has been affected by Trump's lack of professionalism. The debate this past Thursday featured Rubio and Cruz attacking Donald on personal affairs. And by personal affairs, I mean that Donald defended his hand size. And by hand size, I definitely mean hand size. These are the concerns that we Americans must have, especially since the president will be doing business with powerful leaders, such as Vladimir Putin. All right, Mr. Trump, it appears that we have the deal. It was very good doing business with you, sir. Oh my God. His hand is so tiny, I cannot accept this deal anymore. I'm so sorry, sir. I cannot do business with such a tiny man. The deal is off. It cannot be done. And that's all I got to say about this for now. But don't worry. As long as Donald Trump keeps opening his mouth, I'm sure I'll have enough material for another segment.
I'm about to ruin the mood because police shootings. I know this is never a lighthearted topic, but the New York Times posted an article last Wednesday of another unarmed man killed by a police officer in Houston and their police department's huge mess of many shootings that lacked video evidence. The report was on Omar Ventura, who was killed by Officer Jose Coronado Jr. in 2011 after a brawl occurred outside a bar. Officer Coronado also shot at Mr. Ventura's brother, but it only wounded him. Witnesses claimed that before the incident, Officer Coronado left the bar around 2 a.m. in a drunken stupor. No video footage was found to show all of what happened that night, and as a defense, Officer Coronado claimed that Mr. Ventura reached for his waistband as if he had a gun. He reached for his waistband as if he had a gun. He reached for his waistband as if he had a gun. This phrase sounds oddly similar to some other phrases we've heard.
Nothing. Where did I go? Then before that. My ID on it. Take you back for what? I didn't sell anything. I did nothing. We sitting here the whole time. Mind our business. What are you talking about? I watched you. You watched me do what? Who did I sell cigarette to? To whom?
Not that red shirt. There's another guy.
That's who had the fight. That's who had the fight. Yo, boss, that's who had the fight.
In a gray shirt.
I live right here. I live right.
Rice on the left as the police car pulls up. He starts walking toward the car. Both prosecutor Tim McGinty and the Rice family attorneys agree there's nothing new in these images. However, police believe this is the moment Rice lifted his shirt and reached for what officers thought was a gun. It turned out to be a toy. Rice family attorney Zoe Salzman.
What do we see and what don't we see in this frame?
We see Tamir's arm and shoulder sort of lifting upwards, and it's unclear whether that's in reaction to one of the shots that missed him or to the shot that struck him in the stomach. And in the very next frame, Tamir is doubled over and clearly by that time has been shot.
In a statement, prosecutor Tim McGinty says the new footage was released as part of a more open and transparent protocol, and that he is not reaching any conclusions from these or other isolated.
So, the video? Without video footage of what happened that night, How can the public really know what happened and decide? It's a dead man's word against a living man's word. This is one out of many cases of shootings by the Houston PD that go without video footage found. The New York Times reported that, quote, since 2005, the Houston police have shot at more than 460 people and nearly 1 in 5 were unarmed, according to department records. Quote, since 2005, the police have shot 268 people, 111 of them fatally, records show. Damn, Houston, back at it again with the police shootings.
Too soon, Tama, too soon.
The former chief, Charles A. McClelland Jr., defended the department, saying, quote, the law gives wide discretion to a law enforcement officer to use deadly force. The person does not have to be armed, and that's a difficult concept for the public to understand, end quote. But does this really answer the issue surrounding this department? So what he's inferring is that many of the unarmed people that were shot at by police don't need to have a weapon in order to be a threat. But if they have no weapon, how can they be a threat? Hey, here's an idea. What about tasers? An officer could tase the individual if the person was charging at him and unarmed. Why go straight to firing? However, that's not a question for me to answer. Lack of video footage of these shootings incidents is what's getting the department's scrutiny from the public. But the public has seen video footage of some cases where we can see a shooting incident, or in Eric Garner's case, a choking incident, and the results aren't always positive. Eric Garner's and Tamir Rice's cases ended with the officers not being indicted, but in the case of Laquan McDonald, the officer was indicted. The main issue is not necessarily the outcome of these cases, but with the debate surrounding these incidents, even with video footage present. The public demanded that video footage be released, and after some reluctance, it was. Though even with visual proof, debates and statements are still made of the video not being clear enough to interpret or that other words were said. So we have to ask, does it really matter if video footage is shown? If people will still make excuses about it?
We'll have more stories coming your way after the break.
You know, it's work like that. That's why the chicks dig me, I'll tell you.
You know me. Would I let you down? Come here and hug me.
And we are back to weekly programming. Last Wednesday night, late into Thursday morning, over half of Yukon lost power, including many residence halls. The power outage was because of extreme weather conditions. Students with exams the next morning were left hopeless and wondered if they could even wake up the next morning. And the power outage only made it worse. Many residents were hopeful that classes the next day would be canceled and were let down by walking tuition vacuum and former Blink 182 groupie Susan Herbst. But this isn't the first unpopular decision Susan has made. One bad decision after the next has led to a lower popularity rating than that kid in class who asks the professor too many questions. Lower than an apple that has been exposed to air for too long. Lower than Chris Christie's standards. It's almost unbelievable. Though, what do we expect when her last name is literally the German translation of autumn? I guess her last name really suits her because she sure is raking up our tuition dollars. But we'll leave Susan alone for a few minutes. There's other news to get to.
After the recent tragic passing of Supreme Court Justice Scalia, Democrats and Republicans alike have come together to mourn his loss. But they got tired of mourning after about 2 hours and got back to their job of disagreeing to the point where nothing gets done. In this particular case of Senate simpleton standoff, Democrats are outraged at Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, also known as the Human Tortoise, and fellow Republicans for refusing to hear any justice nomination President Obama brings forward. They are justified in their outrage because this committed act is against the United States Constitution. However, they are not justified in their outrage because they seem to forget that Democrats are just as guilty of this as Republicans. Both parties have been caught red-handed committing this act, or in the case of Democrats, blue-handed. In 1992, after the retirement of Thurgood Marshall, President George H.W. Bush planned to appoint a new judge before his term ended the following year.
The then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden shot down every attempted appointment, including exceptionally qualified John G. Roberts. While Roberts was eventually made Chief Justice by George W. Bush in 2005, Biden and fellow Democrats were able to successfully deny his entry into the Supreme Court, violating the Constitution. First of all, Democrats, you can't get mad at Republicans for doing what you did a little over a decade ago. That's like you getting mad that a driver in front of you just cut you off when you just cut him off a few minutes ago. That's like a dentist's waiting room telling you that it doesn't have out-of-date magazines. That's like telling yourself that you're only going to eat 1 or 2 Girl Scout cookies. I can't get enough of those Samoas. Republicans, are you just using this past event to justify their current breach of the Constitution? Come on, Republicans.
That's just childish. That's like saying it's okay to lie because your parents used to do it to you all the time, and probably still do. That's like sticking your piece of gum underneath the seat because you felt other pieces of gum under there first. That's like eating at a rundown Waffle House because the gas station was all out of sushi and hot dogs. What this is in reality is a poor excuse for a breach of the Constitution that neither party should be committing, and that's unacceptable.
And now to bring in our senior student union correspondent, Spencer Dreyer.
Thanks, Joe. Last Saturday, hundreds of high school students across the nation received notice that they have been accepted to UConn. Many of them expressed their excitement on Twitter, and they should be excited. There couldn't be a better time to be at Storrs. First off, congratulations to all of you who got accepted to the 17th ranked public university in the country. That is a job well done. As a reward for your hard work, and here's where it gets good, you're going to be required to help the university pay off its $40.2 million deficit. That's right, last December, the system's governing board approved the increase of tuition by 31% over the next 4 years. So how did UConn get into all this debt, you ask? Well, apparently $14.1 million of that $40.2 million went towards employment benefits in 2015, and I bet you that most of those benefits went to this guy. Here's where it gets even better. The school also promised major cuts that it could include workforce reduction and the closing of some programs. Cuts. That's why our power went out last week. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that all you newly accepted students, that almost half the campus was in the dark late last Wednesday night. We were without our Wi-Fi for the whole night. Not that it made much of a difference anyway, because the Wi-Fi up here is, well, to put it nicely, very unreliable. Now, most people up here say that it was a thunderstorm that put the power out, but I don't believe it. You see, last June, during an executive meeting, UConn violated a law with a closed-door budget meeting. It was supposed to be open to the press, but they closed doors when talking about the proposed budget for the year. Call me gullible, but something fishy was going on behind those closed doors. Almost as sketchy when that guy closed the door at the end of The Godfather. But while you're laughing at me for making up fake scandals up here at UConn, do not worry. There are some real ones to talk about, right here in our student government. Late last month, CLAS Senator Tim Sullivan was impeached for attempting to buy the support of an undergraduate student government justice, telling the justice that if he opposed an election violation case against the USG president, then the justice would be reappointed. All of this might seem unappealing to all of you accepted students, but always remember that our basketball team is nice, and never forget that we got some damn good bacon jalapeno mac and cheese that is worth getting arrested for. Students today, Huskies forever. In debt.
Thanks, Spencer. It's no secret that deciding to go to UConn is probably one of the best decisions you will ever make in your life. The campus is more beautiful than the last Adele song you heard. Our women's basketball team scores harder than a frat boy on Friday night playing beer pong, and the number of clubs and activities that you can get involved in is larger than the number of people who knew that Martin O'Malley was a presidential candidate. However, the true pride and joy of UConn is its academics. Once again, UConn has made the top 20 list of best public universities in the country, this year moving up 2 spots to be number 17. While it's good to know that there are only 16 other schools ahead of us, there is something that UConn has that no other university can rival.
And that is real-life experience. Here at UConn, we know that college is not supposed to be like high school. We don't care about making you remember tons of useless facts until the end of the year exam. Now we make you remember them for only 1 semester. But besides that, any person from any major knows that when they come to UConn, they will learn skills in their academic classes and extracurricular activities that will help them survive in the real world. And last week, the undergraduate student government showed its undying commitment to this idea. Now, it's no secret that being a politician isn't the most fun job, the most honest job, or the job that most people envy. But regardless, if you're going to be a politician, and you have to do it right, really. And how would it be right without a little bit of controversy?
Last week, presidential candidate Stephanie Sponzo was accused of violating campaign rules when she accepted an endorsement from Michael Kimmel at one of the undergraduate student government's events. After he endorsed her in front of a crowd of about 200 students, she smiled and waved at the crowd, reportedly accepting the endorsement. Of course, this angered the other presidential and their vice presidential candidates, so they filed complaints. Keep in mind, you are not supposed to do any kind of active campaigning at a USG event unless it is approved by one of the event coordinators. And since the event coordinator was a vice presidential candidate running against Sponzo, I'm guessing she probably didn't get approval. This wasn't the only USG scandal that came to the forefront last week. I guess Michael Kimmel wasn't the only one on Sponzo's side, because CLAS Senator Tim Sullivan promised one of 2 justices that were improperly appointed earlier this year that if he voted in favor of Sponzo in her case, he could be kept and appointed the right way. Congratulations! If you take my bribe, you'll be important enough to be accepted into USG for real this time.
That's nice. Well, of course, Sullivan has fired back, saying that his actions in no way broke the USG rule of preserving the spirit and integrity of undergraduate student government, and that anyone could be impeached for doing anything when they are held to this standard. He also said, quote, "They are criticizing me for being political, and to an extent it was political, but elections are political, so they are guilty of the same thing." That's a lot of politicals. Not only is he blaming others for their actions, but he is blaming the field of politics. Elections are political, so therefore I must act political. And we all know that in today's political world, being political is the same thing as being corrupt. Even though Sponzo and Sullivan broke the rules, there is one upside. They are both now campus celebrities. Congratulations to both of you. You made the front page. Like we said, UConn prepares students for the real world, and it is certain that it will be sending out the next great wave of corrupt politicians, complete with education in the ways of bribery and illegal endorsements.
We only hope that we can see them on the covers of other newspapers and in the monologues of other comedians in the future.
But we aren't going to end this in any cliche way at all,
No,
right?
Sure, yeah.